Up next, we have Emma Harrison. Emma is a fourth-year student who identifies as both disabled and mentally ill. She hopes to be a mental health counselor one day and currently works for the Center for Students with Disabilities at the SFEO. She identifies with having ADHD, borderline personality disorder, OCD, insomnia, as well as narcolepsy. As a student and activist, she has faced many barriers with regards to lack of accommodations, as well as ableism in and outside of the classroom, as well as within the student community. She sees disability activism as a non-static process that involves continuous forms of learning and working with others interdependently. And the title of her talk is The Stigma of Mental Health Illness in Progressive and Academic Communities. Join me in welcoming Emma.
Hi everyone, I'm Emma. I'm a student, activist, a cat lover who's a bit of a hoarder and a perfectionist. I identify, as he said, as both disabled and mentally ill. I have ADHD, borderline personality disorder, obsessive compulsive personality disorder, which is different than OCD in like some ways, and sleep problems. That was probably a lot to take in. My TED Talk today will be a little bit like all over the place because that is how my mind tends to function. I urge you to nod your head empathetically if you fail to understand but want to look like you are polite and a good ally. Today I would like to talk briefly about my experiences with having comorbid mental illness, the social stigma I have faced, as well as the academic struggles, and I am not alone in this. There are so many other students that go through issues that I go through, so I don't want to make this seem like it's like a unique, singular story for me, because like the truth is, as so many students experience it, it's just not talked about a lot because it's so stigmatized. So I often dread waking up in the morning because of the fact that I must ingest multiple pills and herbal supplements to synthetically increase my attention span, patience, verbal fluency, and be able to cope and function in academic spaces. I feel so much shame when I wake up, like middle of the afternoon some days, because I'm too depressed or stressed to get out of bed and I'm not ready to face the world. I feel equal amounts of shame when I am become a hypomanic mess from sleep deprivation, because I'm so anxious about getting my accommodations and doing my schoolwork on time. Now I'd like to talk a little bit about the social stigma that I face with regards to mental illness. Maybe some of you can relate, maybe some of you can't, that's okay. Because of being borderline, for people, I become this automatically like ideological dreamer and free spirit with endless artistic potential and creativity. That is like not the case at all. I really wish I was like this artistic creature, but like I'm not. I become a counselor to people free of charge and someone that can do your accessibility logistic work while you pose unrealistic deadlines on me that I cannot meet. Also, people seem to think that obsessive compulsive personality disorder gives me this exceptional ability to be organized, detail-oriented, and constantly on the ball. That is like not true. It's actually the opposite, because I'm so concerned with like little tiny things and perfectionism. I often spend so much time like thinking about that and like doing compulsive things like cleaning, like writing lists and everything, that it really affects my ability to work on school, like be punctual and organized. So now I'm going to talk a little bit about my experience being disabled and mentally ill at the University of Ottawa. I initially decided to come to the University of Ottawa because in grade 12 was when like I first suffered a severe mental health episode, and after that I realized I'm like, I come from Manotick, which is kind of like far outside of Ottawa. It's like this unrealistic, like everyone's it's like middle upper class. Everything's a little bit like fairy tale like there, so it's kind of not the reality. Yeah, I thought, you know, if I stay at home, it's better. Like, I'll be with my parents, like my cat, because I love cats, and my family. And yeah, so actually, my first year, during my first semester, like a couple weeks into school, I was hospitalized for having like a severe psychotic. It was a mix of like anxiety and like manicness. So yeah, I was hospitalized, and I stayed in the hospital for like only a couple days, but it was still like a really big experience for me. So from that, I had to drop most of my courses in school because I realized it was way too much for me. So yeah, and the next year, couple of years sort of became like this struggle to survive and get by every day. You know, I became so demotivated and melancholic. Being in like a university atmosphere with really extremely large classes, it felt like extremely impersonal, the experience, and like I was just a number. And the classes, yeah, were just so large. And the commute to school was like an hour or two, so I had all this extra time to like linger with like depressive thoughts, and I put a lot of extra pressure on myself for having to become like this extraordinary human being to make up for the fact that I was mentally ill and that I couldn't function. So the fact that I also took multiple medications every day and dealt with like the unwanted side effects, you know, the side effects from psych meds like really sucked. Like right now my mouth is so dry, and I mean, it sucks, but like I'd rather be at a point where like I can leave the house every day and deal with, you know, these weird side effects that people notice and like I'm self-conscious about. But you know what? I mean, it's the only way. I mean, at least I feel like it's the only way. So the fact, yeah, that I took multiple medications just to become a productive human being sort of was nauseating to me. But my body, I felt like my body always had to look perfect to make up for the fact that like my mind wasn't. So that like perfectionism, in cases of like body dysmorphic disorder, like really manifested on me and would become really, really like strong when I faced like increased periods of stress. Something I've dealt with like a lot in university over the past 4.5 years was like not being able to go to exams, either because I was, you know, I get migraines and they're stress related and they become really bad around like the time that I write exams, and I get really terrible physical symptoms. Also, you know, like insomnia, so I'd sleep through like my alarms because I'd been up like 24 hours the day earlier, like worrying about my exams, trying to cram everything. And yeah, and then it would manifest very severely. And, you know, it became a battle for me to get a medical note, like also with, you know, like I've had problems with like my thyroid from like stress. It's like my thyroid's basically like stopped working and like stuff like that. The policy that the University of Ottawa Health Services has for students to get valid medical notes when they miss exams requires you to show up in person on the day of the exam, but before the exam, for them to use their extremely strict criteria to evaluate if you are sick enough. Literally, I had a doctor at the UOHS like tell me that you had to be so sick, as in on the floor in the waiting room throwing up in a bucket, to be able to write the exam. And it was really nauseating to hear too, like just the sight of it is very unpleasant, and it creates like an unpleasant atmosphere for other people. And I just want to touch and like how you know, the University of Ottawa Health Services, like their policy, it states on their website that like headaches, menstrual cramps, insomnia, caffeine overdoses are not acceptable reasons to miss exams. You must They also state that feeling unwell a day or two prior to the exam, leaving you inadequate cramming time is not an acceptable reason to defer an exam. So like, it makes me feel so great, and like I have so much pride in going to a university that like doesn't even trust that I want to be here to learn, and like it's sort of like the way that their system works is sort of like erasure from like how severe things that are just like described as a headache can really be for people. And I mean, yeah, so UOttawa, defy the conventional, right? The University of Ottawa is rated in the top 2% of universities worldwide, is the largest English-French bilingual university, and has apparently used heart rate to analyze political speech. And that's cool, right? But what has it really done to make the student experience more inclusive and more accessible, and also less traumatic for mentally ill and disabled students? I mean, it has access services, right? Think about it. At a university of almost 40,000 undergraduate students, we have one tiny small department to deal with all things relating to accommodation. Accessibility-wise actually gets dealt with within the classroom. People that need accommodations are literally shipped out and othered to like another place, and like where they can get a quiet space, you know, or something like that. I mean, I have accommodations like, you know, like a quiet space, computer with spell check, but a lot of the time my problems with regards to mental illness that I face around exams are other things than that. So I still spend, like, despite having these accommodations, like literally at the start of every new semester, I have to like run around and like try to get my profs to like agree with these accommodations instead of, you know, them being like, oh, I respect your accommodations. It's like I have to bargain with them to get them or something. And, you know, I have to prove how disabled I am, and it makes me feel like I'm a burden, and like I don't want them to have the idea that I'm just like this lazy student, and that always contributes to like this huge amount of self-shame that I feel. And like, honestly, if I didn't care and I wasn't lazy, I wouldn't be at this university for like almost 5 years. So I really wish that the university truly cared about how, like, that students wanted to actually be here to learn. So the university is set up in a way that puts onus on disabled students to always have to get their accommodations rather than creating more accessible systems to like implement instead. You know, me needing an extra day or two to finish a paper, or just like, you know, getting my PowerPoint notes before class becomes like this huge thing where some profs have told me like, oh, well, you know, why can't you just write them down on paper? Like they always question, you know, why I need my accommodations. That shouldn't be a thing. Like, people should just get their accommodations, and it's just the way that like the universities view students. They need to care more about like, you know, creating smaller classes and having like, you know, alternative formats for measuring grades besides like standardized tests and attendance, which like attendance is great. Like, you get marks for showing up, but for all the people that, you know, can't show up but like want to be there, they literally can't because of like disability or like mental health issues or anything. Like, have alternative ways for them to get those marks, because instead of just assuming that they don't want to show up. So don't ever laugh or nod your head when students like need to take extra time for stuff. They need to like take a semester off. They take longer to get their degree because you don't know what their capacities are, what they have been through, or if they are just like struggling to get out of bed every day to face a system that oppresses them. Thank you.